What's up, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, ready to talk some football with my good buddy, Andy Herman from Pack-A-Day Podcast and a million other places across the internet. Andy, how you doing on this Victory Tuesday after the Bears win?
Hey, doing great, man. Thanks so much. Missed talking football last week. There was a Aaron Nagler sized hole in my bean, so this should fill it. And I always appreciate talking Packers with you.
I'm telling you what, man, sometimes life, it sneaks up on you and it takes over, and that's what happened last week. But we're back, and the Packers, this is an interesting game to look at, especially when you look at the gigantic egg the offense laid in the first quarter. Josh Myers goes down, and by their own admission, they kind of changed their approach. Why did it take that for them to change their approach? Because I don't know what you saw looking at rewatching it, but that first quarter was just mystifying in the sense of trying to attack this Bears defense with that game plan.
Yeah, it was interesting. I appreciated your question to Matt LaFleur yesterday about kind of the empty sets, and as usual, he had a educated response to it as well. But I looked at that first quarter as a million different blocking issues, and some of it manifested itself later in the game as well. But
Right.
everything that could go wrong from a blocking standpoint pretty much went wrong in that first quarter. I thought Myers actually really struggled prior to going out with injury. Even Jenkins had a uncharacteristic play. Just it was poor blocking, and I give Stenovich and Butkus and the rest of the offense credit for obviously not only changing up the offense, but the blocking was much better through quarters 2 through 4, and they were able to actually run some stuff. But there were still issues throughout the game with blocking that we saw some, as you mentioned, the empty formations where, there's one play, this wasn't an empty formation, but where Runyon just basically blocks the entire wrong direction. There was
Right.
Royce Newman had a couple just uncharacteristic stuff like that. And I think that's what really derailed that first quarter.
Let's talk about the guard play for a second. But you mentioned Newman. It's interesting to me because I do think there are just a handful of times every single game, seemingly, where he has moments like that, where for whatever, I don't know if he's short circuiting, I don't know if it's a mental aspect of it or what have you. And we obviously, the one that everyone saw laid bare there was the Max sack. But there are not countless, but there are a few other times throughout that game and throughout most games where he's playing at a high level. And then for whatever reason, I don't know if it's communication or what have you, but there seems to be a pretty regular disconnect in pass pro 2 or 3 times a game. Do you think the Packers just live with that for the rest of the season? Or do you think, at some point they might make a switch there?
Yeah, I think it's always one of those things where I think you probably have a bit more accident forgiveness with a rookie in his first handful of games, and you hope to correct that out of him. Because I actually really like Royce Newman, and I think outside of those handful of plays, per game, which
Right.
is concerning in and of itself. But outside of that, I actually think he puts a lot of good tape. There's stuff that he does every
Absolutely.
single
No
week
doubt.
that really flashes to me. So I can see why Green Bay is trying to develop this player and say, man, if we can just get a couple of these instances out of the way, we really have something here. And it takes time. TJ Lang wasn't ready right away. Even Bakhtiari had these instances in his first year. So like these things. But to your point, I do think it's going to be very interesting when Bakhtiari's back, and obviously now Jenkins is back. How are they going to shuffle that line? Myers will likely come back at some point. I think all that's going to be really interesting. That was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know you mentioned yesterday, I think you wanted to see Yash at left tackle and then Elton at center this week. I know a couple others mentioned, obviously kind of keeping it the same with Elton at left tackle, Patrick at center. But to answer your question initially, I think they're going to stick with them until they, maybe have Bakhtiari back and then might shuffle things around a little bit.
Yeah, to me, I mentioned this on Daily this morning. I would not be surprised whatsoever. And I think the popular sentiment outside the building right now is, put Elton back at left tackle, keep him there, just slide in Lucas Patrick at center, and away you go. And they very well could do that. I just think Elton at center going forward, at least while Josh is out, helps him affect the offense more in the way that not just from pass protection, IDing pre-snap and things like that, which certainly he's very capable of. We've seen him do it, but just allowing them to do more in both phases of the game, both in the run game and the pass game. As wonderful as it's been to have Lucas Patrick as a break glass in case of emergency type player who can slide in. There's a reason he didn't make the starting lineup this year. You know what I mean? There's a lot of talent there in front of him. And Elton is such a talented player, given his ability to move humans in the run game, in a way that Lucas, for as well as he's played, is just not at that level. I think my thinking on the outside is Elton probably helps them do more along the offensive line. Yes, it's great having him at left tackle, certainly some peace of mind. But as you noted, he did get beat for a sack this past week. He's not he's not, it's not a set it and forget it type situation. But more often than not, yeah, you can sleep soundly knowing he's at left tackle. No question about it. To me, though, they've shown multiple weeks in a row that they can thrive with Yash at left tackle. There's no qualms now. Like, yes, they have a formidable pass rusher coming into Lambeau on Sunday, but I think they had a couple of guys in Bosa and Watt back-to-back weeks. Yash held up just fine.
Yeah.
Yes, albeit with some help, sure, but they've shown that they can operate the offense there. So again, wouldn't surprise me at all if they stick Elton at left tackle in the way they go, but I do think there's a chance they put Elton at center for those reasons.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, as you mentioned. I mean, it's been a murderer's row of edge rushers to face Green Bay, and now you get Montez Sweat, Chase Young, and then after that, probably Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt. So it's not going to get any easier anytime soon. But because of that, it wouldn't shock me if the fear of those players led them to Elton Jenkins at left tackle still. But it'll be really interesting once Bakhtiari comes back, where they slot Elton, if they just put him back at guard, if they do put him at center, especially if Myers is still out at that point. I think those are the musical chairs that I'm really, really intrigued by.
Let's expand out from the line for a second. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, it's nice to see them kind of, as after the first quarter anyway, flowing offensively through the running backs. Like Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, combining for, I think, like 30 touches, tons of production there. I really think it's starting to, gel after like 2 or 3 weeks now, where these guys are your engine. Yes, no question about it. Aaron to Devontae is always going to stir the drink, so to speak, as far as that's always going to be the number one option in the passing game. But as far as making the offense go, getting the defense on their heels and second guessing themselves, it's been great watching this tandem of Jones and Dillon. And it was again on Sunday. The Bears really didn't have an answer for either one.
Yeah, I really liked, and I mentioned this during the game, how didn't give up on the run, down 7-0, and maybe the offense not putting up the explosive points on the board earlier, really even at all. 24 points, certainly not an explosive performance for this offense, but the fact that they stuck with the run, and Matt LaFleur was adamant about it, during the week last week, and reiterated it again in his press conferences since the game, of not wanting to get behind the chains and pour down in distance situations. And I think that was really key. You don't want Mack and Quinn and Hicks in obvious third downs being able to just get after the quarterback. And we saw in a couple of situations where Green Bay did find themselves in those situations, it didn't end very well. So sticking with the run. And I think the other thing too is sometimes the idea of something is better than what we see it in execution, right? And the idea of this perfect tandem of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, it sounds great in theory. You've got your thunder and lightning, and one guy's going to be the bruiser, the other guy's going to be your, lightning back, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. Like, this has worked out very, very nicely through the start of this season. They complement each other perfectly. A.J. Dillon is obviously helping out in more ways than just being a bruising back. I mean, the cutback he had this week is just a person his size sweet. Outside of Derrick Henry shouldn't be able to move that way. And then, of course, Aaron Jones. It's funny because you have the power back and you have the speed back, right? But A.J. Dillon has way more agility and pass catching ability than your normal power back. And Aaron Jones has way more power and finishing ability than your normal, speed scat back. So they're both complements, but they're both just all around great football players.
And that's the thing. Like, they're both pretty damn complete players, which, again, if you're a defensive coordinator and you're trying to get a bead on what they're going to do or trying to do, good luck, because as you say, both guys can do it all. And it's just a question of how you choose to attack the defense.
I'd like to see both of them on the field more too, together.
I know we want some more pony. Let's get it. Let's get it going. Switching over to the defensive side of the ball. It'd be easy to sing the praises of Kenny Clark or talk about Devondre Campbell, but I'm going to start with Jalen Smith, because I did not, for the life of me, understand what the hell they were trying to do with this cat. Like, I get it. They made this move. He's been there now, I guess, absorbing the defense, etc. I fully expected him to be a sub-package, like dime, maybe occasionally blitzing, blah, blah, blah. But, man, they brought him out there on early downs, and basically you got what you saw on tape down in Dallas, which is good luck in the running game. they finally started just kind of blitzing him after a while, which is fine. And I'll take that. But man, I was completely baffled by their plan with Smith on Sunday.
I agree. And I don't know what their plan is for what packages, who is, I mean, we saw Barnes and Burks and Smith all get about equal snaps. So, I mean, shockingly, Burks gets the most, followed by Jalen, followed by Barnes.
That was right.
I mean, it was really odd. And maybe some of it is wanting to spy Justin Fields a little bit more and having guys like Smith and Burks on the field with their speed makes a bit more sense, but was certainly very surprising. And again, I mentioned ahead of time, was not a fan of the Jalen Smith move. I 1,000,000% hope that I'm wrong over time. I would much rather me be wrong and the Packers be right 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000. And I'm, again, also willing to give him some accident forgiveness here in his first game, learning a new defense without question. I'm not at the I told you so point yet, nor will I hopefully ever be. But it was very baffling in the way that they used him. And as you mentioned, we saw some of the same issues that he had at Dallas in this game, just, missing reads, missed tackle. And again, a lot of that could just be overthinking things at this point, and hopefully it's able to click. Somebody posted this on Twitter. Maybe it was you, maybe it was, who knows? But I think the former Joe Thomas role, not offensive lineman Joe Thomas, the linebacker Joe Thomas, where you're basically a nickel dime, pass only linebacker. I do think there's potentially some opportunity to use Jalen Smith in that type of role, and he has great athletic ability, and I'm excited to see what hopefully he can bring, but not certainly the greatest first impression in the world.
Backing up a little bit to the safety spot, I mean, Savage, we'll see how long he's out with the concussion protocol, most likely to start practice tomorrow. But what did you think of the play after he went out? I mean, I thought Black held up pretty damn well. And then you put in, obviously, Douglas for Yadam at corner. Those are two guys. Obviously, one of them, Black, was in camp. He played at a pretty damn high level. But I thought Douglas gave him a little something. And yes, there were like rough moments, but those are two guys that haven't played a ton that I thought held up pretty well considering the circumstances.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought, the play at safety didn't really dip all that much at all when Henry Black went in there. There was the one play, I haven't watched the All-22 on defense yet, but I know there's one play where it was targeted downfield and Black was one-on-one in coverage. I don't know if it was Robinson or Mooney, but
I think it was Robinson up the right sideline.
I think you're right. So he was there. I'm excited to see that play on All-22 to see if it was just good coverage or, whatever. But overall, I thought it looked good at first glance. And then as far as, Rasul Douglas, I think it was Ross Uglum who said that was a very professional cornerback sort of day from Rasul Douglas.
That's perfect. Yes,
exactly. Like, we're not getting any flash here. We're not getting any, we're getting a couple plays where maybe he was a little bit over aggressive and things like that. But, he kept everything in front of him. He made the tackles for the most part he was supposed to make. He didn't give up any huge plays, unlike Isaac Yiadom. And that, I mean, when you're bringing in a guy off, you cannot ask for a better game than that for a guy you just got off the street, a week and a half ago, whatever it was. So I was impressed by him. And I think he does bring a level of energy and intensity, not all dissimilar to like what Brashad Breeland brought to the Packers when they signed him mid-season, that one season. So I think he can be that type of player. I don't think you necessarily want him on the field 60, 70 snaps a game if you don't have to, but in the interim, he certainly seems like the best option over anyone else they have on the roster that's healthy right now.
No question. Now, and obviously I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, what the hell has gotten into Dean Lowry? Like, this cat was so poor at the beginning of the season, the first kind of week, probably 6 quarters of the year. The last couple of weeks, Dean has played well, and he absolutely was on fire against the Bears. What is going on?
He was my 3rd rated defensive player 2 weeks ago, and I'm excited to see where he ends up this week. And that's always the fun part, right? Because I hate being the jerk, and when somebody grades out horribly, like giving an awful grade.
Andy, I handle that. I enjoy being the jerk, so
I appreciate it.
If you need something, you need to say something jerk, whatever. Just let me know. I
have an Aaron Nagler translator actually on my computer where it just translates a nice statement and it turns it into a Naglerism. But no, I've been very impressed, and it's awesome to see a player like that who maybe struggled. And I was waiting last year because the normal Dean Lowry MO is there's a few games I'm going to struggle. I'm going to be mostly nondescript for the majority of the games. But then there's going to be like 2 or 3 games where I just break out and have a ridiculous game out of nowhere for no apparent reason. And last year, we never really got those 2 or 3 games from Lowry. It was just mostly nondescript and some below average. He started below average this season. It was really trending in the wrong direction. And then you get 2 back-to-back games like this, and it leaves you certainly hoping that it can continue that way, because that would be amazing.
And of course, because we cover all aspects of the football game here when we talk football. How about an 83-yard punt? Are you kidding me? That cat caught it and hit it at the 6-yard line and literally kicked it into the other end zone.
And on a low snap, like Bradley dribbled it to him. He picks it up and just, maybe he was so frustrated at the snap that he just took all the frustration
took it out
on the ball. But I mean, like, how often do you see the punt returner that's like in a normal punt return position, just like
watch it fly over his head
and just like completely fly over his head? And I said this on the video the other day. I'm happy it dribbled into the end zone, because we would have lost Pat McAfee if that ended at the 1-yard line. It would have ended Pat McAfee. He would have exploded into a million pieces.
Spontaneously combusted.
Yeah, exactly, because he would have been freaking out on an 82-yard Bojo punt. So I'm happy it rolled in the end zone. It was only a 63-yard net, because otherwise, again, Rodgers and McAfee wouldn't be happening today.
It's amazing when you look at the difference having, I mean, I'm not going to say competent, which is what we've been preaching kind of all offseason, that all we want is competence on special teams. But it's amazing what a weapon he really is. And I know we used to joke about that with JK, but he is a weapon. He's legit, not only in the sense of flipping the field, but his directional punting, his ability to pin the returner to a sideline and allow the return or the coverage units to kind of engulf the returner. I could not be more impressed by his play so far 6 weeks through the season.
I know very little about punting. I know even less about golf, but it seems like he is a punter that has every club in his bag that he needs to be successful. He knows how to put backspin on a ball. He knows how to place a ball perfectly. He can directionally place it. It seems like he can slice and do anything he wants with that football, like an amazing golfer can do with a golf ball. That's what you want to see from a punter, but the ability to get hang time when he needs to get hang time, launch a ball when he needs to launch a ball, pooch kick a ball when he needs to pooch kick a ball, pin it inside the 20, directional. Like, he has everything. And again, it's quite amazing, A, that the Rams had 2 punters like him and Hecker on the roster, and that B, that Green Bay didn't have to outbid another team, more than what they had to give up to get somebody like that. He's definitely been a difference maker for the special teams.
Looking ahead to this Sunday, Washington coming in, not a very good football team. I don't think that's a controversial statement. But where do you see, if the Packers have to, look at one area with Washington and the football team as a whole, where do you think the one danger spot is? Because it's the NFL. Every team's got talent, and Washington is no different. What's the one spot you think, this is what they got to look out for, prepare for the most?
I know it's boring and cliche, but it's been massively disappointing up until the point this season. But that defensive front should be one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL. Whether it's Payne or Montez Sweat, Chase Young, they even have depth that is really, really good on that line. Like, it is Jonathan Allen. Like, that should be not only one of the best defensive lines, that should be one of the best, units, whether it's edge or defensive line, linebacker, corner, whatever. Like, that should be one of the best units in football, and they have clearly not been. I tweeted back at Zach Cruz this morning. I think Washington's defense has arguably been the most disappointing group of any offense or defense in the NFL so far this season. You expect them to get it together at some point. Green Bay's offensive line, a little bit ripe for the picking. Thankfully, Jenkins is back, but Myers is down. Bakhtiari, I would assume, not ready to play.
I would be shocked if he plays this week.
I agree. So, that could be a matchup that Washington has an advantage on. And if so, how quickly a defensive, front can ruin a game for a team. So that's where Green Bay has to start, by winning this football game.
Well, there you go. All the latest talking football with Andy Herman from Pack a Day Podcast. Andy, thanks so much for joining me again, man.
Appreciate it as always. And let's do it again in a week.